Executive Summary: Thane C. Hines Story, the most famous story in human history. Date, August 24, 2024, Bramble Hill Farm, Blakeney, Ontario, Canada. My name is Thane Christopher Hines and this is my story. In 1980 I was sitting in my motors and generators class at CEGEP, Heritage College in Hull, Quebec, with fellow students and friends Stephen Scribner, now Director of Innovation at Queen's University, and Peter Selwyn, retired field service engineer. Professor Mike Else was introducing the class to the concept of generator armature reaction, and his innocuous introduction was about to change the world forever. Generator armature reaction is an electrical engineering term which is colloquially referred to these days as electric vehicle regenerative braking, or EV, kinetic energy reduction deceleration. Generator armature reaction, as Professor Else described it, is a counter-electromagnetic torque which works in opposition to the torque supplied by the prime mover, gas engine, wind turbine blades, hydroelectric water power, etc. Generator armature reaction ensures that for every 1 watt of electricity generated, an equivalent 1 watt of mechanical input power must be supplied to the generator's drive shaft. To put this into perspective, currently the world generates about 16,000 trillion watts of electricity every year with Faraday electric generators, which were invented in 1834 by Michael Faraday. In order to generate 16,000 trillion watts of electric output power with Faraday electric generators, a minimum 16,000 trillion watts of mechanical input power must be supplied to the generators every year. As an avid physics student in 1980, I was taught that torque is work, so I immediately put up my hand and said, "Sir, where does the energy come from in order to perform the counter-electromagnetic torque, since torque is work and all work requires energy according to Newton's first law of motion and the work-energy principle?" Professor Else was stunned because he could not answer the question, and he continued, "The counter-electromagnetic torque is created by the generator coil's electromagnetic field, which enters the air gap between the generator coil and the generator's rotating magnetic field, and this electromagnetic field resists the generator rotor's rotation, reducing its kinetic energy, slowing it down, and requiring increased amounts of fuel energy to be supplied to the generator's prime mover, which is translated into mechanical input energy, which then is supplied to the generator's drive shaft in order to keep the generator running, generating electricity and to avoid stalling." I immediately put up my hand again and said, "Sir, if we could somehow divert the electromagnetic field out of the air gap and away from the generator's rotating magnetic field, we ought to be able to reduce its negative effects and produce a more efficient electric generator, right?" Professor Else's response was immediate and direct this time. He said, "Yes, Thane, of course you could do that, but first you will have to violate Newton's third law of motion, Lenz's law of induction, Faraday's law of induction, the first law of thermodynamics, and the law of conservation of energy, and we all know that you are not the person who is going to be able to do that, so please shut up and don't ask me any more stupid questions." I decided to drop the subject for the next 21 years. The day after 9/11, I began searching for a peaceful energy alternative to oil. One that we didn't have to kill for in order to get, one that we didn't have to die for protecting, and ultimately one that didn't end up destroying our planet and eventually killing us all in the end either. At my Uncle Dale Hines' Bramble Hill Farm in Blakeney, I began exploring my 1980 idea of reducing the negative effects of generator armature reaction and somehow diverting the electromagnetic field out of the generator's air gap in order to make electricity 10–15% more efficient. In 2005 I was able to secure investor funding by Kevin Thistle, J.C. Cunningham and Dan Gormley, with my eventual wife Kim Cunningham acting as the VP of communications for our new company Potential Difference Inc. Our original goal was the reduction of generator armature reaction by 10–15% in order to make electricity generation slightly more efficient, reduce costs and reduce pollution from fossil fuel electricity generation. This achievement would reduce prime mover input energy costs, greenhouse gas emissions, and the mechanical input energy requirements for all global electricity generation by 2,400 trillion watts every year. Kim and I moved into 169 Spring Street in Almonte on an Indiana 2007, and in my basement lab I discovered completely by accident and via a comedy of errors that, Not only could generator-armature reaction be completely eliminated, it also could actually be 100% reversed, which baffled everyone including Dr. Scribner, Queen's University, Dr. Zahn, MIT, and everyone who has ever witnessed the anomaly firsthand. Reversing generator-armature reaction meant that the generator actually accelerated itself when generating electric power with no external energy being added to it. Better yet, it could potentially mean that zero mechanical input energy would be required when generating electricity, zero input energy cost would be required, and zero greenhouse gas emissions would be produced. To put this new discovery into perspective, in order to generate 16,000 trillion watts of electric output power every year forever with Thane-Hines invented and US patented ReGenX electric generators, 0.0 watts of mechanical input power would be required to be supplied to the generators every year forever, $0 input energy costs would be required every year forever, and 0.00 ounces of greenhouse gas emissions would be produced during the global electricity generation cycle every year forever. The only person who was not baffled was Professor Els, who I called immediately and asked him if he remembered my question I posed to him in 1980 in his Motors and Generators class at CEGEP. Professor Els said, "Of course I remember your question, Thane. In all my years of teaching it was the stupidest question I had ever heard." I informed Professor Els that I had succeeded in my quest and that I wanted his help to explain what was actually going on. Professor Els was not interested and informed me that his interests now included woodworking and not electrical engineering. In 2008 we took our generator prototype to the esteemed Dr. Zahn at MIT and asked him to please explain what was occurring. Why was our generator prototype accelerating itself with no external energy being supplied to it, seemingly violating Newton's first, second and third laws of motion, Lenz's law of induction, Faraday's law of induction, the first law of thermodynamics and the law of conservation of energy, just as Professor Els had predicted in 1980? Was this a new scientific discovery even commercially viable? Dr. Zahn confirmed the Peripatea generator's acceleration phenomenon, although no one understood why, and he also confirmed that it was indeed apparently violating Newton's first, second and third laws of motion, Lenz's law of induction, Faraday's law of induction, the first law of thermodynamics and the law of conservation of energy, essentially making it the most important scientific discovery in human history. Additional research would be required to determine if the discovery could actually be translated into a commercially viable product or if it was just an interesting effect of no real value or significance. Potential Difference Inc. established a research collaboration between MIT and the University of Ottawa. Dr. Zahn and Dr. Habash would help us get to the bottom of this new discovery. We isolated the acceleration phenomenon in the Power Lab at the University of Ottawa and used the information to which fellow student friend Leslie Virani used to file our first US patent in 2013, which would be granted in 2018, generator and improved coil, therefore having electrodynamic properties patent number 10103591. We also introduced 13 new laws of physics and rewrote almost 3.4 centuries of physics, which now requires the rewriting of most of the laws of physics from Newton's 3 laws of motion, 1687, forward. If Mike Els were to answer my 1980 "where does the energy come from" question today in 2024, he would say, the energy which is required in order to perform the negative work, system kinetic energy reduction deceleration, at infinite efficiency in all Faraday electric generators according to the work energy principle, is created electromagnetic field energy, which is created instantaneously at the subatomic quantum electron level inside the generator's current-bearing wires via electron fission and electron fusion according to Hines' law of creation of energy. Hines' first law of thermodynamics for electrodynamic systems and Lenz's law of induction. And the energy which is required in order to perform the positive work, system kinetic energy increase acceleration, in all Hines, US patented ReGenX electric generators and ReGenX quantum motors, according to the work energy principle, is created and time-delayed electromagnetic field energy, which is created at the subatomic quantum electron level inside the generator's current-bearing wires via electron fission and electron fusion according to Hines' law of creation of energy, Hines' First law of thermodynamics for electrodynamic systems and Hind's law of induction. In 2007 in Almonte, Ontario, Canada, Thane Hines discovered that energy is not a finite commodity but rather is infinite and can be created in unlimited amounts anywhere and everywhere at the point of use, which makes it the single greatest scientific breakthrough in human history, and it eliminates the need for oil wars and the threat of climate change for humanity forever. Thane Hines' 2007 scientific discovery at 169 Spring Street in Almonte, Ontario, Canada invalidates and rewrites Galileo's law of inertia, Galileo's principle, Newton's first law of motion, Newton's second law of motion, Newton's third law of motion, Faraday's law of induction, Lenz's law of induction, Joule's work-energy principle, Mayer's theory of conservation of energy, Mayer's first law of thermodynamics. And it introduces Hines' revision of Galileo's law of inertia for electrodynamic systems, Hines' revision of Aristotle's and Galileo's law of inertia for electrodynamic systems, Hines' first law of motion for electrodynamic systems, Hines' law of inertia for electrodynamic systems, Hines' second law of motion for electromechanical systems, Hines' transformation or the new subtraction or addition of velocities for electrodynamic systems, Hines' third law of motion for electrodynamic systems, Hines' law of creation of momentum, Hines' first law of thermodynamics for electrodynamic systems, Hines' law of induction, Hines' work-energy principle for electrodynamic systems, Hines' first law of thermodynamics for electrodynamic systems, Hines' law of creation energy, Hines' new perpetual motion machine definitions of the fourth and fifth kind. And now provides all electric vehicles with the ability to completely recharge themselves as they drive, eliminating the need for EV plug-in recharging. Lenz's law of induction of 1834 and Hines' law of induction of 2007. Physicist of yesterday Heinrich Emil Lenz, a Russian physicist who devised Lenz's law to describe the direction of electric current generated by a wire moving through a magnetic field. He is best known for Lenz's law. An induced current will create electromagnetic field energy which will perform negative work and oppose the changing magnetic field, reduce its kinetic energy that induced its current. It is the reason for the negative sign in Faraday's law of induction. Physicist of today Thane Christopher Hines, a Canadian physicist who devised Hines' law of induction to describe the direction of the flow of time-delayed electric current in a current-bearing wire moving through a magnetic field. He is best known for Hines' law of induction. An induced and time-delayed electric current will create time-delayed electromagnetic field energy which will perform positive work and assist the changing magnetic field increase its kinetic energy that induced the current. Hines' law of induction places a positive sign in front of Faraday's law of induction. Mayer's first law of thermodynamics for mechanical systems and Hines' first law of thermodynamics for electrodynamic-electromechanical systems. Energy-related carbon dioxide emissions worldwide from 1990 to 2050, by fuel in billion of metric tons. First law of thermodynamics for Faraday generators. The net change in the total energy of a system is equal to the heat added to the system minus the work done by the system. The new first law of thermodynamics for ReGenX generators. The net change in the total energy of the system is equal to the heat subtracted from the system plus the work done by the system. The most important law of physics in human history. The law of creation of energy of 1820. The law of creation of energy states that electromagnetic field energy can be created and absorbed at the subatomic quantum electron level via electron fission and electron fusion in a current-bearing wire. The process of electromagnetic field energy creation and energy absorption at the subatomic quantum electron level via electron fission and electron fusion in all current-bearing conductors. When electromotive force or voltage is applied or induced in a current-bearing wire according to Faraday's law of induction, it causes loose electrons to exit their valence orbits via electron fission and cascade within the wire as electric current. When the unstable and disassociated electrons return back down in their lower energy level valence orbits via electron fusion, they emit photons which create and constitute the electromagnetic field energy around the current-bearing wire. The subatomically created electron fusion photon energy is the internally created energy source which performed positive electromechanical work and increased the kinetic energy of Ørsted's compass needle in 1820 while simultaneously violating Newton's first law of motion. This subatomically created electromagnetic fusion photon energy is the same internally created energy source, which has been performing all the negative work in every electric generator since 1834 according to Lenz's law of induction, the work-energy principle and the law of creation of energy. 2005 First peripateia generator by potential difference Inc. A sudden change of events or reversal of circumstances. Everything you once held as truth is now false. 2007 peripateia generator 2.0 169, Spring Street, Almonte, Canada. 2008 peripateia generator demonstrated and performance validated by Dr. Zahn at MIT. Toroid coil. High impedance accelerating ReGenX generator coil with 30-gauge wire. 2009 peripateia prototype brass coupler supplied by Electron Energy Corporation in Pennsylvania. The second most read story on the Toronto Star's website for all of 2008. Thane Hines, CEO of Potential Difference Inc. Invents and U.S. patents the ReGenX generator innovation which operates with a load current delay and allows the generator to reverse generator armature reaction and generate electricity at infinite efficiency, eliminating 100% of the energy input requirements for all global electricity generation and all carbon dioxide and air pollution. When employed in electrical mobility, the ReGenX generator produces electric vehicle regenerative acceleration, where the EV is accelerated while the batteries are recharged and EV plug-in recharging is completely eliminated. Thane Hines demonstrates his peripateia generator at the University of Ottawa in January 2010. The university offered him lab space to develop his technology. 2008-2010.5 Ottawa University, Perpetual Motion, Satellite Lab. Peripateia generator prototypes 3.0 and 4.0. 2008-2018 Electron Energy Corporation demonstrations in Pennsylvania. 2011 Hero Electric Scooter Integration Project. 2018 Electric Vehicle e-Bike Integration Project. EV World Hines Effect gaining credibility by Mike Brace Tech Editor, March 19, 2012. Back in July of 2010 I wrote a story called The Hines Effect. It was a simple story about a self-taught inventor who asked a stupid question and got a stupid answer. 30+ years ago Thane Hines was young, naive student at Heritage College CEGEP when he asked the professor teaching the electric motors and electric generators class an obvious question about efficiency: if you could figure out a way to retard withhold the counter EMF on the advancing magnet by 10%, would you increase its overall efficiency by 10%? Why even bother answering that question, because if you did, you would be violating several laws of physics, so you can't do it, was the reply. And that was that. 2020 Pierre Poilievre 16,000 trillion to 0 demonstration. Introduction to the global problem, Faraday electric generator operation and the first law of thermodynamics since 1850. Introduction to the Canadian solution, U.S. patented ReGenX generator innovation and the new first law of thermodynamics since 2007 for global electricity generation and electric mobility. 2023 Ukrainian National Academy of Science Thermophysics Engineering Division purchase order agreement for 1,030 kilowatt ReGenX generators for the re-electrification of the Ukraine. The U.S. patented ReGenX generator innovation operates at infinite efficiency and as a result it requires zero mechanical input power to be supplied to the generator drive shaft from the prime mover when the generator is places on load from no load at idle, and the prime mover's on-load energy consumption increase is 0 joules. When generating 30 kilowatt the prime mover's energy consumption is less than what is required to establish no-load rotational equilibrium at idle. Pending partners in 2025. Savic Motorcycles Regenerative Acceleration Hub Motor Development Project. EMBR Motors Infinite Range Electric Truck.